For decades, one name cast a very, very long shadow over the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh: Atiq Ahmed. He wasn't just a gangster, he was a lawmaker, a don, a man who seemed absolutely untouchable. But his story? It didn't end quietly in a prison cell. No, it ended live, on national television, in a hail of bullets.
So that's the big question we're digging into here. How does a man who built an entire empire on fear, surrounded by police, end up assassinated right in front of dozens of cameras? To really make sense of his death, you have to understand his life.
So let's set the scene. It's a dark night in the city of Prayagraj. Camera flashes are going off everywhere. Reporters are shouting questions. Atiq Ahmed is in police custody. But in all that chaos, nobody realizes that in just a few seconds, a whole crime empire is about to come to a spectacular and incredibly violent end.
To make any sense of that chaotic night, we've got to rewind. We need to understand how Atiq Ahmed, the son of a simple horse cart driver, climbed his way up to become the undisputed king of Allahabad's underworld, and eventually, a lawmaker.
His rise was just swift and totally brutal. He jumped into the world of crime in 1979, and he figured out really fast that to be the top dog, he had to take out the current kingpin, a gangster named Chand Baba. And he did it. In broad daylight. A huge statement. But then, he made his smartest move. He got into politics. He won his first election in 1989, and eventually, he even became a member of parliament. Think about that. He was still a criminal, but now he had the protection of the state. And you see, this political power became his entire business model. For years, the system kind of worked like this. Gangsters would deliver votes, and in return, politicians would look the other way. By becoming an honorable lawmaker himself, Atiq basically gave himself a shield. The police wouldn't touch him, and that allowed him to run this massive enterprise of extortion, land grabbing, and kidnapping. For all intents and purposes, he was completely untouchable.
But, every empire has a breaking point. And for Atiq, that point came in the form of a political rivalry, a public challenge to his authority that his ego just could not let go. So, by 2004, Atiq was a member of parliament, which meant his old local assembly seat was up for grabs. He wanted his brother, Ashraf, to win it, keep the power in the family. But a new face, a guy named Raju Paul, didn't just run against him, he actually won. Now, for a man like Atiq, this wasn't just a political loss. This was a personal insult, a direct challenge to his dominance.
Atiq's response was terrifyingly quick. Just a few months after the election, on January 25, 2005, Raju Paul was gunned down in broad daylight. Police found 19 bullets in his body. 19. This wasn't just a murder. It was a message to the entire state. This is what happens when you dare to cross Atiq Ahmed.
But one single man refused to be silenced: Umesh Pal. He was the key witness to Raju Pal's murder, and also a friend. Atiq's gang kidnapped him, they tortured him, they even gave him electric shocks, all to force him to change his story. But Umesh Pal, he held his ground. And that decision? Well, it set in motion the final, fatal chapter of Atiq's life.
Atiq had survived and thrived for decades, but now, two things happened that would spell the end of his entire empire: a major political shift and one last, unbelievably arrogant crime. In 2017, the government in Uttar Pradesh changed. The new administration, led by Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, came in with a zero-tolerance policy aimed specifically at the mafia. And just like that, the political protection that had kept Atiq safe for decades, it just vanished. He was no longer an asset, he was a target.
And this quote from the chief minister, said right on the floor of the state assembly, became a rallying cry. We will grind the mafia into the dust. This wasn't just some political statement. It was a declaration of war. And Atiq Ahmed was enemy number one.
The state immediately began taking his empire apart, piece by piece. First, they moved him to a high-security prison way out in Gujarat to cut him off from his local network. Then, his associates were targeted. And his illegal properties, well, they were famously torn down by bulldozers. The walls were closing in, fast. So, trapped, his power fading, Atiq made his final and most fatal mistake. From inside his jail cell, he ordered the murder of the one witness who had defied him for 18 long years, Umesh Pal. And in a really shocking display of audacity, the attack was led by his own son, Assad. It was a direct, public challenge to the government's authority.
The state's response this time was massive and swift. On April 13, 2023, Atiq's son Assad was killed in a shootout with a police task force. Atiq got the news while he was in court. And for the first time ever, the man who had terrorized his city for decades broke down and wept in public. The empire was crumbling, and now, for him, it was personal.
And this all builds to that final unbelievable moment. We are back on the night of April 15th, just 2 days after his son was killed.
Atiq and his brother Ashraf are being walked by police to a hospital for a routine checkup. The media is all around them, and a reporter asks why he wasn't at his son's funeral. He gives this simple, almost tired reply. "They didn't take me, so I didn't go." Those would be the last words he ever spoke.
Out of that media scrum, 3 young men posing as journalists pull out pistols. In less than 10 seconds, they fire 18 rounds, killing Atiq and his brother right there on the spot. So what was their motive? Revenge? A rival gang? Nope. They told police they just wanted to kill someone famous to make a name for themselves in the criminal underworld. In a grim final twist, it was the very same ambition that started Atiq on his own path all those years ago.
Atiq Ahmed's death brought an end to a 44-year reign of terror. That chapter was finally closed, but the story he left behind raises some really difficult questions about the very system that created him and then saw him killed.
A lot of people celebrated his death as the end of an era. But when a gangster is killed on live television by men who want to be the next big gangsters, it forces you to ask a really tough question. Was what we all witnessed some kind of justice, or was it just the violent beginning of a whole new chapter?